All right, everybody, welcome to the CAD Dimensions Smart Engineering Podcast, Episode 2. My name's Derek Welker, and I'm joined here with Adam Simons. I'm more of that technical resource. Adam's is a little bit more on the sales side. But what we've been doing recently, Adam, is we've been going around and doing what we call these MBE, Model-Based Enterprise events throughout kind of Western New York and Western PA. We've got pretty good attendance, and if anybody doesn't know what MBD is, it's kind of that ability to take that product and manufacturing information, put it in the model so we can save out that 3D PDF and kind of get rid of drawings. But you know, when we're getting people in for these events, you know, what's that conversation been like for our customers and even companies that don't own SolidWorks? Are they initiating the conversation with you, or how does that go?
Yeah, it kind of is a wide range or spread. I would say that you know, a lot more companies are getting more mature with their 3D modeling practices. Right, and they're looking for ways to continue and improve that process and improve that communication between design and manufacturing. There's also some industries that are typically more mature as well, like aerospace and defense, that are moving more in towards the benefits or the downstream effect that models have on their operations, and looking at ways to continue reducing to building all that model data in, and how that supports their manufacturing operations and everything downstream is very, very beneficial. So kind of depending on who you're talking to and where they are in their journey, it can be something as eye-opening as, hey, did you know that you can add all this information to your model? Or we're adding all this information now, how do we take that next step towards moving away from 2D drawings and just using our model as king?
That's awesome. And we're even getting, some of our customers are getting requests for MBD, right?
Yep, exactly. So, and going back to the industry I mentioned, aerospace and defense, we've got, you know, the larger operations, larger manufacturing companies in those industries like Raytheon, like Boeing, Airbus. They're starting to ask their suppliers to become MBE ready, or being able to actually just be able to give them a model instead of all the drawings because of all the miscommunication that can happen. So we're already starting to see some of those from the top 1 and 2 suppliers, tier suppliers in those industries, being asked of them today. You know, not all of them are there, but they're trying to make those steps over the next, say, 3 to 5 years to really get there and ramp up those efforts.
Right. And, you know, you just mentioned one of the biggest reasons why we think that switch is going to occur is just that misinterpretation of a 2D drawing. Yeah. You know, we see that a lot. Me, myself, being in that younger generation, you know, when we go to college, they're not really teaching correct drawing practice. You know, we just did a session not that long ago where everyone in the room laughed and said, "Oh, these kids, they don't know proper drawing etiquette like back in the day." So the other thing that I find really, really difficult is the fact that, you know, we have all of this technology in SolidWorks. You know, it's come a long ways over the past 20-some years. Whereas in the very early or infancy of SolidWorks, it was just kind of that modeling practice, where now we have like topology optimization, all these great tools, but drawings really haven't changed.
Right.
So why do we put all this effort into 3D drawing and then you just get a 2D out? Yeah. And, you know, a lot of our companies that we work with, or a lot of the vendors that they work with as well, say that the vendors just end up recreating that part in 3D as well. Right. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so to mention what you said, we talk to a lot of customers that are actually investing a lot of money to train younger generation on being able to read 2D drawings, right? Just to be able to function in their operations as they stand today. So, you know, obviously as this transition occurs and as more and more people try to rely on that 3D model and sort of the younger generation adopts that and can manage that much easier, you know, we're going to definitely see those types of gains and benefits. I mean, just in terms of the miscommunication with models and drawings, you have that opportunity to have sort of discrepancies in both, right? In which one really becomes the master. You also have suppliers that are getting more and more able and ready to be able to take in 3D model data where they didn't before. So there's a real opportunity here for customers that, you know, want to become better in their operations and kind of leverage their investment, what they've done today in 3D models, and kind of carry that all the way through the gamut.
Yeah, absolutely. And we even talked to some of our customers that are vendors for these larger companies, and they're saying that they're just requesting that 3D model, and
Yep.
like they don't even want the 2D drawing. They'll look at the 2D drawing for the
Yeah.
tolerances, obviously, and that's where we get into that fact of limited dimension drawing. This is kind of a term that's come up more recently, is either reduced dimension drawing or limited dimension drawing. We're trying to get away from that full spec drawing. You mentioned it great in one of our points that the time that it takes to create a drawing is almost even more time than it does to create the assembly.
Yeah. So what we're finding is if we really ask our customers where they're spending the bulk of their time, you would think it would be in the creation of the 3D model, but in fact, it's not the case, right? If they're spending a day on the model, they're spending maybe 3/4 of a day or to a day on detailing the 2D drawing for manufacturing, right? And what we're trying to find is what really is the value there to that organization. And kind of as we're talking through this, there isn't really much there. Like you mentioned, the technology in 2D drawings hasn't really changed. People's ability to read 2D drawings has kind of gone down. The acumen there isn't quite what it used to be. So if we can have a better communication tool and move towards that direction, why wouldn't we?
Right, absolutely. And some of the people or some of our customers have told us that what actually occurs in engineering is, they'll fudge a drawing, but the part won't get updated.
That's
and then
right.
when the next revision occurs, that drawing or even the part doesn't have that updated information from the previous revision.
That's right.
So the errors and inconsistencies are all over the place.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of found out that 60% of the time, roughly, there's a disconnect between the drawing and the model.
So
which
we've
is
thrown
a
that
lot.
we've thrown that out in some of our events. That statistic, which actually came from a government study, and I don't think we've gotten pushback from anyone. In fact, they've probably said it's probably bigger.
Absolutely.
So again, not just the discrepancy on Rev 1, right? But if something changes in manufacturing, if someone notices an inconsistency in the 2D drawing on the shop floor, chances are they're probably just fixing it there at the machine, right? And going through with that change without notifying engineering of the change. So none of the documentation gets changed. So the next time that part gets made, right, it's either made wrong or there's questions in terms of why didn't the documentation get updated, why are we out of spec in this drawing. So there's a lot of that going on in manufacturing today.
Absolutely. And I think another statistic from that same exact study we just mentioned was that like 1/3 of engineering dollars spent are on 2D drawings in the initial creation and to sustain the product down the line.
Exactly.
1/3 of the money that you're spending, that's got to be huge for our customers. I mean, what else could they do with that money?
Yeah, imagine an opportunity to take 1/3 of your budget and reallocate it anywhere else where there's actually real value creation being done. So it's huge. Again, we've never gotten any pushback on that statistic either. I think a lot of people agree that they spend too much time on 2D drawings and for all the wrong reasons, right? I think we'll talk about it in a minute, but really the culture of companies and the reason that they continue doing it that way is because they've always done it that way, right?
Yeah, we find that with almost any product is that, we've been doing it this way for the longest time, that, why do we need to change? But, we've talked about a lot of these benefits or at least just problems with the 2D drawings. And, I think the misconception with MBD is a little bit for the fact that it's going to save the time on the drawing creation, and we talk about this quite frequently that we want to educate our customers on how MBD works, and it's not necessarily the time savings, it's all the benefits we get downstream.
Right.
So if you're kind of creating the same exact drawing in MBD than what you're doing on a drawing, I think the time that it takes you to create those are going to be identical or not really much of a difference, but all the benefits you get downstream with like the new SolidWorks CAM tolerance-based machining, that's a benefit. We have now you can use Tol Analyst with those things. There's even software that can create a CMM program based off of those as well. If you're sending that model to your supplier instead of a 2D drawing, they don't have to recreate that part in 3D for them to manufacture, so that saves time. So all of these things kind of added up. It's not necessarily the tool itself, but it's everything downstream that I think is really, really beneficial.
Agreed. I think it's not even just how the technology communicates with each other downstream, but also all the technology that's going into manufacturing equipment, right? And that ability to just send a 3D model to a machine and have all the operations necessary, all the programming necessary available based on the information that's in that model, and be able to process that part without a lot of human interaction, that's really the future of manufacturing and really where SolidWorks is going to support that type of operation.
Mm-hmm. And I think the only drawback or problem that we see with some of our customers is they're telling us, hey, we don't send models. We only send these PDFs or our drawings to protect our intellectual property, our IP. Yep. But at the same time, it's if you're sending a manufacturer enough information on a 2D drawing to be able to manufacture it, what difference does that make with a model? Yeah. I mean, is that a conversation that you've had with customers, or have you seen that quite frequently?
Yeah, so there is concern there, and I think that's why in the past a lot of people have relied on using step files or neutral format files. They don't include a lot of that data. But again, at the end of the day, there should be enough protection for you as a business to be able to send your parts out and have them get manufactured quality and everything else that goes along with that without a lot of concern in terms of the IP associated with the model. I think it can be a little bit misconstrued in the customer's mind in terms of, okay, are we really at risk here? Chances are you probably are as much at risk with the 2D drawing as you are with sending them a model.
Exactly, because you're essentially supplying the same information.
Exactly.
Yeah, and with MBD, it has the ability to just save out a step 242 and attach right directly to the PDF, or at least SolidWorks does. So it just makes it really easy to send out. Some other benefits is that with PDM, we can, as we release a drawing, we can have a workflow set up so that it automatically recreates that 3D PDF. Because unlike a drawing where that drawing is associated with, that 3D PDF is kind of like a one-time send-off. Right. But with PDM customers, they can release that drawing and it automatically kind of updates that PDF, whereas in the past, they might have to go in, update that drawing manually, where once you make that change in that model, it updates that PMI information and can automatically be there. Yep. Now, like you mentioned a little bit earlier, the biggest hurdle that we see in overcoming is culture. Like we have this giant spreadsheet and the top 5-6 things of reasons why people don't implement it is culture, and it actually has nothing to do with the software. Yeah. Is that pushback a real concern? Is that something that you see a lot, or are we starting to get over that hurdle?
I think we do see that concern, and we do hear why. And lots of times when we challenge that why or challenge the culture of, you've always done it this way, why don't you continue doing it this way? It really boils down to, have you asked the person actually making that part of the supplier that you're outsourcing this to, what they would prefer to receive. And lots of times they haven't asked. And lots of times when they do, that person would prefer the model anyway, and they're requesting the model anyway in addition to their 2D drawing, because the 2D drawing isn't helping them get that part done any quicker than if they had the actual model themselves. So I think if we challenge, the people within a company to ask themselves or start asking their suppliers if this is a good direction for their company, for their business, even in the short term, they're going to find out that, this is a viable solution that we should start implementing, sooner than later.
Right. And like you mentioned, they're starting to request the 3D model. Right. So we're kind of getting that technology is kind of going that way anyway. Yep. But as far as implementation goes, one nice thing about MBD is that when you create those 3D views in MBD, the problem is in that short term that you're kind of transitioning to MBD, typically our customers are going to send away that 3D PDF and also that 2D drawing. Right. So you're not going to cold turkey switch over. The nice thing with MBD is everything that you create in that 3D view, your PMI information, the view itself, can actually just be directly dropped right into a drawing. Right. So all of that information doesn't have to be recreated on both ends of it. It just makes it a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. And I think as far as implementation goes, we even have some capability assessments that we can kind of have these conversations with customers. Have you had any conversations with our customers as far as long or large scale adoption, or what is that process kind of like? So
in the conversations that we've had, it's kind of taking a look at where they're at with their modeling practices, right? Are they modeling everything? Are they modeling just the supplied parts? And are they modeling it correctly and to a point where they're in a position to start adding that PMI data to the model? We talk to a lot of customers that maybe not as mature in their 3D modeling practices, and that's obviously a first step, right? So getting them to a point where they're adding this data kind of as part of their upfront design process so that it can be leveraged further downstream. then I think it's taking a look at what opportunities can they take that are relatively simple to test out, right? So do they have some in-house operations where they're going to be machining some parts for their products in-house, and they can start kind of testing out this new process using 3D PDFs instead of 2D drawings there. Then it's taking a look at their top suppliers, right? Who their go-to supply lists are, and then start bringing them into the fold after they've kind of run through some testing on there and making sure that they're following the necessary steps up front in their design process to make sure all the data is there and that the drawing is legitimate for manufacturing. From there, if you're kind of checking off those resources and they're on board and it's going well, I think you're in a pretty good position to really, across the board use MBD versus a 2D drawing.
Right. And, we've even supplied some of these example 3D PDFs to some of our customers that they can work with their suppliers with, so that, everybody on that entire chain can see what it's like to kind of make that switch over to MBD. And I think kind of that the word that really hits home with this process is all model-based or model-centric. Right. I mean, I guess it is called model-based definition. Right. But, moving over to making sure that all of your information is in that model, I think is the first step. So even if our customers or companies don't have MBD and they're looking to kind of make that transition, I think the first thing that they need to do is focus on being model-based, put everything in that model, and go to those limited dimension drawings. That way, when they make that transition to MBD, that's going to be kind of exactly how you're going to do it, just in the 3D PDF. So I think it's on a technical resource level, try and focus on becoming model-centric with those limited dimension drawings, and that makes that transition a little bit easier as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. There's value to moving in this direction today, even if you don't have short-term ability to go to MBD today. There's still value in developing these types of model practices now in preparation for moving to model-centric operations down the road, for sure.
And I think kind of the last thing I wanted to touch on is that some of our customers are actually do have MBE or model-based enterprise initiatives in their company, kind of like continuous improvement. Have you seen that a lot? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've worked with some larger customers that are more affected by this because of the industries that they serve, either suppliers or other operations that kind of are government mandated that they move toward model centric. It's a situation where they're developing this right along with us, right? So I think every company is going to be a little bit different, and every industry is going to be a little bit different on the requirements. And as those get framed and kind of rolled up and better understanding of those, you're going to see more and more of this type of push and more standards around model-based versus 2D drawing-based.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that these initiatives are great for companies because it's really making that push. But also, we're going to see that like you said, Airbus, Boeing, these larger companies are going to make that push, and it's going to kind of trickle down, kind of like how SolidWorks was, or even 3D happened way back in the day. It kind of started up at the top and just worked its way down.
Completely agree. Yeah. So the bigger players are absolutely driving this. You go to an aerospace and defense trade show; it's widely talked about. They're making it very known of where the future is going for their suppliers. And I think the suppliers are getting on board with it. So we're seeing more and more of them kind of understand the benefits and the value, not just to remain that top supplier for the industry, but to also the benefits that they can realize in their company to become more profitable.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the only thing that I kind of forgot about as we were going through this is quality inspection. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the big problems that we see from our customer standpoint is they're looking at it and going, okay, how are we going to inspect this if we have no annotations? Where I think, even some software that we sell, the technology is there. We do also sell scanners that can do full 3D inspection reports that just give you kind of a model and a report back. So, you can still get those full spec inspections. Yep. So I think there's technology that's here now, but also coming that's going to change the way we do even that side. So I think as a whole, in the next 5 to 10 years, engineering as we know it is going to be completely changed.
Yeah, agreed. The technology is really outpacing, the demand right now. With that said, there's some things that were developed even in the last couple of years that people can start implementing now and really getting prepared for the next wave of technology, which is already in development and coming. So yeah, it's a rapidly changing aspect of what we do. but rest assured the technology is being developed to not leave any gaps, right? So if you're thinking to yourself, how would this work? How would this work? I think that's the time you want to start engaging some of the experts in the field, such as people from CAD Dimensions, and really understanding, how we fill those gaps and what processes we implement.
Right, and exactly to your point, I think with SolidWorks introducing MBD, a couple years ago now, that even though we're not making that switch over, we're still trying to develop that technology, work out the kinks, so then when it is ready for prime time, there is it's going to be there.
Exactly.
And I think with the new updates and enhancements to 2019 that we show in our rollout videos or launch videos, that it's now, I think, ready for prime time. Like, it's got all that functionality. There were some kinks that we had in previous years, but I think now's a really good point to make that switch, or even start thinking about it. Say, hey, look, we could make the switch now.
Yeah, I completely agree. So there's enough customers out there that haven't even really thought about this or had to think about this up until now. I think that now that more and more people are looking at, there's enough technology there to keep them busy and really to put some effort towards, in the short term, really developing those longer, better term processes and operations in the future.
Well, Adam, I'd like to say thanks for stopping in for our podcast, and hope to see you again in the future. And if any of our customers are out there that are looking at MBD or have any questions, feel free to reach out to either of us or any of our sales reps. They should be able to talk about this pretty in depth, but this is a technology that's going to be really impactful moving forward. And thanks again for stopping by.
Oh, no, thank you for having me anytime.
All right, see you guys in the next one.